All right, so on the Reddit thread, looks like another guy made video, but it's not available anymore. So I was doing this repair, and might as well show you guys. So I initially thought on here you take the actual glass off. Turns out you don't actually have to do that, which is nice knowing now because it's quite messy. But if you look, the camera, this piece normally sits right kind of like that. Well, you can actually, what I did is I took a razor blade, I went in between that little gap there, and I just started lifting up. This all came up, and there's some adhesive there. I don't have replacement adhesive, so I'm just cutting off the stretch stuff and saving what I can. So yeah, you just lift that up with the razor blade. You have your screws right there, and let's continue digging. All right, like you can see, if you're like me and don't get the adhesive, I just used a knife and cut away the stretched parts, and we're just gonna reuse what is left around there. And if it's not good enough, I'll just cut a couple pieces of double-sided tape to help it out. All right, so we removed the screws here. Next thing we're gonna do is take our razor blade again and just put it in the seam and slowly kind of pry it outwards, same way we did with the cover right there. All right, so yeah, just use the razor blade to put in the seam right here. Just a little bit of prying and being very gentle. This swung outwards, and it just like that disconnects. So this right here is our motor. Looks like we're gonna have to take off this support piece all through here, and then this should just lift out, this being our replacement motor right there. All right, we got this piece off right here. You end up needing to take out the black screw right here. There is a gold screw right here, is right there, and then another gold screw right here. After that, and just a little bit of wiggling to get it around this ribbon cable, it will lift out. So next thing, looking at this, it looks like we'll have two screws right there, as well as a ribbon cable underneath this. It looks like it wraps around right there. So I'll keep digging and let you know. All right, I ended up unhooking the 3 ribbon cables for each of the cameras. You see it right there. I just folded it back so I didn't have to disconnect the flash. So it looks we were correct. This ribbon cable just wraps around the board to the motor. So I assume if we just lift this board up, we'll be able to get to the mounting screws below, as well as that connector. All right, so I just disconnected this ribbon cable, and it looks like we can actually just move this board over just enough to where, if my fat fingers will do it, to where we get to the one screw there. So I think that is what I'm gonna do, make it a little easier. Do keep in mind that this connector for the motor, there's a little bit of adhesive foam material on the plug on the board, so it might take a little bit more effort than normal to unhook it, but this should be fairly easy. All right, I took that one screw out, and the motor just kind of slid right on out, nice and easy. So the old motor is right here. Now, one thing we're gonna have to do is make sure these, if you look, there's those little notches. We want to make sure those line up so they actually slide back into the phone body. I think for that, I'm gonna use very light pressure because these are very delicate motors. Very light pressure, just rotate the new motor so it's matching up with the old one there. And I would assume you would feel it if you tried putting it in incorrectly. But just don't try to force anything, and keep in mind they're very delicate motors and you don't want to break them. All right, that shaft is matching now. All I did was take some needle nose and grab the end and slowly rotated the motor. You have to keep in mind these are servo motors, which means there is a gear system in there and you really don't want to break those gears. But I just grabbed it, rotate it around, and now let's try fitting it in there and hooking it back up. All right, new motor is in. So I went to slide slide it in a little. It is at a little bit of an angle, but it went in. And then the tab, I just pushed down slowly. You'd feel the gears move and screwed it into place. So let's start hooking it back up and see if it works. Motor hooked up, cameras folded back down, ribbon cables plugged in. It's time to mount this plate back on. Alright, plate is back on. Keep in mind this ribbon cable goes above. So everything is now secure. And I'm going to power on the phone and let's see if it works. Alright, let's see if this works. Haha, yes it did. That's wonderful. That's awesome. Now keep in mind, if you have issues with yours where it's going at odd angles or having issues going up or down, I would start off with doing a camera calibration. It's in the settings and it lets you just tell the phone again what's fully closed and what's fully open. And if that doesn't fix it, I would go back, make sure everything's plugged in, and then look at your motor. They are delicate and it is possible to break them during the install. But as you see here, this one is working a-okay. And we have our, if I get in frame, normal angle. We got our wide angle and our zoom. Perfect. I'll go ahead and put that faceplate back on and we should be golden. One thing I should mention as well with this, if you look, there are little things there. So you kind of have to swing it back down on. Don't place it like this and push it. You will bend those metal tabs right on in there. Give it a good swing motion and it should go right down. Cover in place and screws down. Last thing we gotta do is put this back on, which is thankfully adhesive. Alright, that piece has been applied. If you are like me and remove the glass because you're a dummy, this is where you would take your replacement glass, place it back on. For the rest of you, don't take this glass off. The trick, if you look at the lip right at that, you can put a razor blade right in there and pry it up. But yeah, don't take this glass off. It's messy and unnecessary. Alright, the glass is back in place, and with the help of a couple very light drops of super glue, we are back in business. It has been way too long, and I've learned my lesson. Get a decent case for these phones, and don't use the included plastic ones. They do not offer a whole lot of protection.